Why am I?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another lesson starting chapter 49 in Tanya. Last chapter 48, the rabbi went into a deep philosophical Kabbalistic discussion of showing us what God went through to create the universe. That he needed to create something from nothing. From nothing meaning cannot be traced back to its root. Unlike everything in our universe that you can go back and find where it came from, the universe, you will never be able to discover where it started from simply because that's the way the universe was created. So all the scientists can go
Oh my
back
goodness.
into how all the universe
Let's
is,
see.
but they can never, and some would say 1,000,000, some would say 10, 100, 1,000,000,000, 2,000,000,000. I always ask, can you tell me when it started and how it started? And they cannot. The Big Bang Theory is a theory at best, and it was refuted already 1,000,000 times. It's like some expecting after a hurricane to go to a junkyard and find a jumbo 747 Boeing, and discovering that because of the hurricane took all the junk cars that were piling up force levels, and from the hurricanes mixing and swirling them, a Boeing 747 was created. But the Kabbalah tells us that that's the idea, that God is so unlimited and so vast that it's impossible to be creating directly from God, and therefore there had to be a moment of nothing and then creation. And the way God created, once he created space, and he filled the space with objects. And we call it Sovev and Memale, encircling and filling in. We discussed it for many aspects. So I want to move on. The rabbi now is going to, so to say, get to one more point, and then I believe the first half of the chapter, and then apply it to us. The rabbi is going to, in particular, deal with contractions. That once God decided to create the universe, it couldn't have happened overnight, immediately. But it had to have many changes. And there are myriads upon myriads of changes and contractions that take place. But in general, they are divided into three categories. And I think I touched upon it last week because it's a very important, very a main theme in Kabbalah and Jewish tradition. And they are the last three universes, as we'll discover in a moment. And that's why it will explain why are we created with the desires and urges to do bad, to misbehave. I'm not even talking about addiction. Even a healthy person, it is a lot easier to live a life free of any obligations. Why do I have to tell the truth all the time? Maybe sometimes, maybe if no one will ever discover, I don't have to tell the truth. Why do I have to care for others? How come the rest of the universe care for themselves? Why am I obligated to care for my children, for my spouse, for my family? Perhaps I should pay, or if I am fortunate enough, I should have other people care for my family, and I don't have to care for anybody else. Why is there the obligations to follow dietary laws? Why do I have Shabbat? And even if I don't, for a non-Jew, there are many obligations. There must be a justice system. There must be respect and honor the parents. There must be caring for animals and the rest of the universe. Where does it all come from? Why did God created me in a dark place and, so to say, making me walk against my own nature in order for me to survive or to live the way God wants? And the last point that I was going to talk about in this chapter is how will we as human beings be able to get to that point where we can control the ego, where we can contract, just like God contracted himself to create the universe. It is a reflection of God. Each human being is a universe. How can I contract myself where my ego does not overtake every meeting, every conversation, every space I'm in, but rather allow for others. By looking at the way God operates, it enables us to live similarly with contracting or controlling our ego. So, to make it easy, how many contractions God used to create the universe? Myriads upon myriads, untold number. However, they are divided generally into three. And they are the three lower universes as we know them. They are called universes because they are spheres. They are, the first one out of four is Atzilut. Atzilut is emanation. It's the start, but there is no universe there. It's, so to say, the empty, vast space. I'm using very metaphorically, very simple terms, so there's no other ways of explaining it. Then the first universe, Bria is creation, the start of something. The third universe, which is the second part of creation, Yetzira, formation, creating something that looks at the shape, and Asiya, the actual action of this universe, is making and breaking it alive, making it move and being physical. So the three, Asiya, Yetzira, Bria, are the three contractions. Atzilut is not a contraction, it's just the starting point. Emanation, yeah, is the starting point. It's not. Now, I should say that I do not see it anywhere, but it's so simple that it's obvious to me that the human being, creating a human being, goes through the same thing. In order for cohabitation, there has to be a connection, a love, a marriage between a male and female. We call it creating space for one another. That's Atzilut, getting married. Getting married, there is nothing yet that was created, but there is no creation unless we agree to share a life together. That's Atzilut, the first space that was created for us. Then comes Bria. Bria is the actual cohabitation. Can you look at it and say it's viable? No. But something that later on can be traced to the DNA is created. Yetzira is the 9 months of the formation of the mother's caring. Asiya is the birth. A child was born. He's on his own. He's breathing. He's eating. Until now, he was part of the mother. Once he's born, he's separate. These are 4 stages. By the way, we will see those 4 stages in many aspects in Judaism. We'll see the same thing, by the way. And again, nobody ever asked this question, although it's obvious, a simple question. Every morning, those of us who come to synagogue to daven, we say Elokai, our Lord, my Lord, Neshama shenatata bi, the soul that you place in me, tehorah here. What is tehorah? Pure. What's the next word? Ata berata. You have created it. Ata yetzarta, you have formed it. Ata nefachta bi, and you placed it in me. These are the 3. The question is, how is it possible to talk about the soul before you spoke about you created it? In other words, you say neshama, the soul that you placed in me, teorah, is pure, and only then we say you created it. But if the soul is pure, it was pure before it was created. The order should have been the soul that you have created and formed and placed in me, she is pure. Or the soul you have created is pure. You formed it. And the answer is, the neshama goes through every day, every morning, to those 4 stages. Tehorah, pure, refers to Atzilut. It has nothing to do with actual creation. It's pure, meaning creating the space. Then you start created, formed, and instilled in me. So the 3 stages actually begin 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, because the first one is no creation. It's just void. It's just creating a space. Sobeb.
The contractions you're talking about.
Ali, did you understand that?
Contractions you're talking about are the contractions of the
Or Ein Sof in the universe. I used an example of a simple child being born, And I used an example of the neshama, the soul. The soul came from part of God. That's the first stage, removed from God. And then you say, you've created it, you formed it, you've placed it in me. In other words, went through those three contractions. Did you understand that? What?
My question was, if the Or Ein Sof,
Atzilut is Or Ein Sof. Above Atzilut, there is no Or Ein Sof. There is no light of Ein Sof. It's Ein Sof itself.
but that's what we're contracting.
Right. But in the soul is different. The universe is one aspect. Here is a story. I don't know how to very well connect it, but it's a good story. It's a true story. And I know the couple. One day, a Chabad rabbi in the Far East receives a call from a person who says, I heard about your great activities and I want to discover more because I think I can help. Usually when you get such a call, you suspect. But the man was very convincing, and he says to the rabbi that he's coming for business. This is Thailand. Thailand has a lot of investors from across the globe, Europe, Israel, and United States. So the man says, I'm coming to the country. I'll be here for a couple of days, and I'm staying in this hotel. He gave him a very luxurious hotel. And he says to him, I would like to meet with you to discover more of your activities in town so that perhaps I will be investing, like I'm investing in businesses here. I would like to invest my tzedakah here. And the rabbi made up a time with him. The man says during the day he's busy doing business. So at 5 o'clock one afternoon, they're going to meet. The rabbi got dressed up. His wife asked him before what's going on. He told her this day he's busy, he's going to go out. She said, make sure you go first impression. Nice tie, nice suit. She ironed his outfit. And then he goes out to his car and he's driving to the hotel. As he arrives at the lobby, to his surprise, he meets his wife. His wife is there waiting on him. So he turned to her and says, what are you doing here? She says, I'm the businessman that came to meet you. I'm the one who asked someone to go. He says, really? Why? She says, well, you give attention, you give time and attention to everybody in town except me. I never see you. You always have a good excuse. So I figured I'll have to, so to say, cheat so that after all, I'm also a contributor, a donor to the business, to the assets. And the rabbi realized how far he went. And obviously they changed. But the rabbi is not ashamed to speak about it because as young rabbis, sometimes they're so eager that we do not put the priorities in appropriate way.
First, she got the divorce in.
Because she took Uber, he got his car.
She is
The idea is, there is a similar story that goes around, and that is a child who felt that his father never have time for him, never give time for him. His father was a very successful attorney. When he came home, he always was busy reading the newspaper and reading summaries and papers. He never had time for him. And he always would say to his son, I'm working so you have food and clothing to eat. One day, the child calls the office. He wants to speak to his daddy. And the father was very busy. Begrudgingly, he answered the phone. And the child says, Daddy, how much do you charge per hour? And he said, why are you asking? He says, because it's research I'm doing. How much do you charge per hour? So he said to him, I'm charging $350 an hour. And the son said, great. So I have saved $200. I would like to have a half an hour of your time. When can you give me that half hour? I'll pay you the $200. And thank God the father was smart enough to realize that he went very far if his son needs to buy time to spend with him. And I share with you, it's not just married people. It's not just parents of children. Anybody we know, people crave relationship. People crave connection. And we need to give them the time. We're not only not going to lose anything, but actually it helps us, except that we don't see it that way, but it's not right. When God, this is the idea of contractions. God has removed himself so that we search for him and connect with him, not that we separate ourselves from him. So why is it that God did all the contractions, as we'll discover, myriads upon myriads, and divided into generally 3 levels, which Rabbi is going to talk about the 3 levels, is so that we turn around and say, where is my wife? Where is my child? Am I spending enough time? My neighbor, my friend, my sibling, my parents. We need to realize that this is the way God created the universe, is that we should crave that relationship and invest. If it was too easy, if God was right next to me, we will not enjoy the discovery, the search, and therefore it would not be valuable. But God is hiding himself in such a way, a complete hiding, so that when we discover God, we enjoy and we feel very special. And that goes along on many other aspects in Judaism that here is one more example. Children, and I think the lessons here are numerous. Children need their parents. Their parents are very close to them. At first, they feed them all the time. They dress them, they bathe them. Then they teach them how to walk. Once they learn how to walk, the parents take a step back. What happens when the child reaches adolescence? Now the parents need to learn to take a step back, even though it's very painful. What happens if we are a tiger mom or whatever dads are shielding and hovering over the child? The children feel trapped, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And the reason is not because we should stop caring about them. It's quite the opposite. Because we care about them, they need to come back to us on their own when they discover us. If we will never let them out, if we'll not release them and open up the space, give them the space, they will never enjoy life. What happens when a child gets married? If parents still try to control, and very unfortunate among Jewish people, my experiences were not my personal, but where parents feel that they still have the right because they want the best for the child and they know they have life experience. It is the worst thing you can do. When I talk to couples who get married, the first thing I tell them, do not allow anyone to enter your relationship, including parents. The loving, kind parents who provide and give all the time, as soon as they say their opinion, they are crossing a line. And the reason is our love towards our children grows with the time. But with that, the greater the love, the more we need to take a step back. That's exactly the way God did. God, when Adam was created, God was there walking with him every step of the way. And then Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, etc. We became adolescents when we left Egypt. And we messed up a lot of times. We end up in jail. We stole. We created a record. Let's put it this way. Finally, God, the father and mother pray, please, let's get you into a moment where you find a partner and share a life. Finally, that moment came when King Solomon built a house. It didn't last a long time. We had cheating on each other, yelling and screaming, banging each other with all kinds of things. It didn't work out that well. But if God is hovering over us, there will be no experience of life. The point is, I'm spreading it a little bit because I think it's very important, because it's applied on many levels. When you truly love someone else, you have got to give them their autonomy. You have got to create space for them. For example, I don't want to talk about myself all the time. My parents, for example, I will not force, even though I should say it differently instead of talking about my parents. There was a couple here, Holocaust survivors, that I met when I moved to town. They had only one child, and he was living in San Francisco, and he was doing very well, very extremely financially, very well secured, and he provided his parents with everything. One day, the husband and the wife, I knew the husband very well, and I'm not related to our topic, so I'm going to skip a lot of parts, but he asked me to guarantee that no matter what stage of life he is, he should never be admitted to an institution, to an old age home, to a nursing home. And the reason is he came from Poland. When I met him, he was in his late 80s. When the story happened, he was already in his 90s, in 1990. So you can imagine, at the time, he really lived a long time. He suffered the Nazis and he ran away. He does not trust authorities or the public. He did not trust any of that. And he says to me, I'm begging you, when he was in fully sane and healthy, I do not want to be admitted, nor my wife. And also, he says to me, I don't care what they do. Please promise me that you will be my advocate. And I gave him my word. The time came, he could not take care of his wife. They lived not far from here in a small apartment. He could not, literally, he had dementia, he lost his sight. And one time a social worker tried to convince me to allow. I came in, there were cooked chickens from a year and a half earlier. The medications were all mixed up. They couldn't, she lost weight. She was under 90 pounds at the time when it happened. The child came in from San Francisco and moved to town. He rented a place here to be near his parents. And everybody asked that they should be admitted to a nursing home where care is provided. They really needed it. But I stood up, and the doctor came in once and said to me, for their own life, they need to be admitted. But I said, that's their wish. You have to respect it. The fact that they are suffering and you don't know what medication he's giving his wife, the fact that you can tell that she's not eating, you have got to find ways to help them. And they did not want much help. So that also was an issue. He could not drive anymore. He lost sight, he lost vision. But I stood until the very last moment, that nothing should be done against their will. And the reason is, and this is my experience, and I've gone through that experience many times, is because as human beings, that's the way God acted, and he created us like God. So if I have an opportunity to discover God, it will be the greatest pleasure. If I want to establish a relationship with my children, and I shelter them, provide them, and there for them all the time, I'm actually hurting them, and I'm doing a great disservice. That's the idea of deconstructions. That's why, as we are born, and over time, we stay farther and farther from the children and our kids, and as far as we can as they mature, not because we don't love them, because we love them much, much more. The greater the love, the farther the distance. And therefore, God, we are as far as can be from God, because God needed to make sure that we have our own autonomy and independence to make sure to choose that relationship. I hope I made myself clear. I went through on a limb here, but they're all the same ideas. Let's get to starting text. Chapter 49, page 745. I am reading the introduction. I have shared with you the main idea. The rabbi is going to go through details, but we have studied them many times before, so I think I can go a little fast. The Alter Rebbe explained in the previous chapter that since the light and life drawn down from God is infinite, Ein Sof, as its name indicates. Therefore, in order for the finite world to be created, the divine light had to undergo a multitude of contractions, tzimtzumim. This was the only way that finite creation could proceed from the infinite light of the Ein Sof. Were it to have been drawn down in an orderly progression, finitude would have never resulted. It's impossible to create finite from something that's infinite. As will be explained later in this chapter, all these contractions were a result of God's love of the Jewish people and his desire that they have the opportunity to fulfill Torah and the mitzvot. So whenever I do study Torah, I give God a kiss. Whenever I perform a mitzvah, I give God a hug, which discussed in chapter 36, 37. In other words, God distanced himself, so to say, from us. So we have an opportunity to give him a hug and a kiss from time to time, expressing our love, and that brings great pleasure to God. The Alter Rebbe will now describe these contractions in a general manner and will conclude that just as God overcame all obstacles because of his love for the Jews and created finite world and creatures, so too as water mirrors the reflection of a face, should every Jew overcome all obstacles and come to experience a love of God. Moreover, just as God brought forth his light into this world in a manner that transcended orderly and limited progression, so too should every Jew seek to serve God, not only in an orderly and limited fashion, but without limit, renouncing everything for the sake of his love for him, of God, as we'll discover in this chapter about the Shema, where we affirm our love for God without boundaries. Even limitations foisted upon him by the world's very nature should not act as an impediment to his service of God. So there should be no limitations to relationship between us and God. Says the Rebbe, even though the particular aspects of the nature of the obscuring and concealment of the infinite light of the blessed Ein Sof is in the descent of the worlds, descending as they do ever lower, until this material world was created, are too numerous to count and are of many diverse kinds. There are many types and many levels, as is known to those who have tasted of the tree of life, the Kabbalah. Yet in general, there are three levels of powerful and comprehensive contractions, giving rise to three comprehensive worlds, each category consisting of myriads upon myriads of particulars. These are the worlds of Beria, Yetzira, and Asiya. For the world of Atzilut is godliness itself. I think I explained that. So when I say universes, it's not a plain space like we know this universe. It is a sphere, an area or a space where contractions take place. Atzilut, emanation, is not a universe, but after Atzilut, there are three universes. Since Atzilut, the first one, emanation, is godliness itself, it is the Or Ein Sof, it is not considered to be created ex nihilo, but rather is called Atzilut, which means an emanation from the form and an extension of godliness, an illumination which comes from godliness itself. I hope you understand that, because I've already explained that. In order to create the world of Beria, which consists of the higher souls and angels whose service to God is in the sphere of the intellectual faculties of Chabad, Chokhmah Bina Dat, which are clothed in them, that is, godliness is revealed to them in an intellectual manner through the three intellectual faculties of Chokhmah Bina Dat. I think we discovered before that Yetzira is emotions and Beria is intelligent. Remember when you when you pray to God, and you use your brains to pray to God, the angels elevated to the world of Beria. If you pray to God with simple kavana and you have your emotions attached to it, so you go to Yetzirah. So Beria, the first universe, referred to intellect faculties of the 10 attributes. In particular, a child who is formed, the brains comes first. The brains represent the first of the 10 attributes, Beria. And they, that is the souls and angels, apprehend them and receive influence from them, from Chabad, which illumines them. In order to create a world whose creations are not wholly nullified to God, as is in the case in Atzilut, but are only capable of knowledge and comprehension, and it will be noted that comprehension entails an awareness of one's own being, in that comprehension presupposes an entity who is comprehending, and either you understand that or not. In other words, in order for me to understand, there has to be me. I have to feel myself and contemplate. If I do not feel me, if there is no me, separate entity, I do not understand anything. So therefore, the world of Beria is already a creation of something. What? Intellect. So there are 10 attributes there, but the ones that shine brightly is the first 3. And therefore, the angels and the souls in that universe have only to do with intellectual connection to God. So too from Beria to Yetzirah. In order for the world of Yetzirah, a world far, did I skip? Yeah. There necessarily preceded a powerful contraction, as mentioned above. A mighty contraction was necessary in order to ensure that the light of the godliness manifest in Atzilut should be hidden in that only a contraction from form of light should illuminate and create creatures of the world of Beria, which are on a level of creation ex nihilo. So too from Beria to Yetzirah, in order for the world of Yetzirah, a world far lower than Bria, to be created, there again had to be a powerful contraction for the minute portion of light, minute that is, in relation to the light found in Atzilut, which clothes itself in the world of Beria, is still in a category of infinity in relation to the world of Yetzirah, so that the light of Beria had to undergo a powerful contraction before it was able to descend into Yetzirah. Did you understand what we studied? Anybody? No?
Well, I didn't know ex nihilo, but I just looked it up. It's a Latin phrase.
Ex nihilo means matter of fact.
Literally translating out of nothing or from nothing.
From nothing. Okay.
Is most frequently used to describe the creation of the universe, the concept that a divine being created all matter in existence completely from nothingness,
Ex nihilo.
rather than from pre-existing materials.
Thank you so much.
That's helpful, because I had a hard time with that.
All right. Thank you. I learned something new. Back to our discussion. You have Atzilut, the first universe of emanation. There are no creatures there because a creature is a separate entity from God. There cannot be any. Then God created Beria. In order for Beria to be created, a little bit from Atzilut goes through many, many contractions. So many that it looks like something from nothing. The world of Beria is nothing. The Atzilut, the source of Beria, is nothing. And Beria is, yes, she's something. Then from Beria to Yetzirah, the same thing. Beria, which is very little from Atzilut, now very little of Beria will create Yetzirah. So the father of Yetzirah is Beria. I hope that you understand. Are you following? Everybody understands, David? Thank you.
I think of Bereshit, Beria.
Beria is Bereshit. Very good. Thank you. So Atzilut is also a universe, but in that universe there are no creatures. There is no separate entity. We call it emanation. It's the creation of Or Ein Sof, the light of infinite. It's also created ex nihilo. But in comparison to us, to creatures, that universe, there is nothing there. The start of creatures, of entities, is in the world of Beria afterwards. So between Atzilut and Beria, ex nihilo. Between Beria and Yetzira, ex nihilo. Between Yetzira and Asiya, ex nihilo. I should say, in each universe you have 10 attributes. The lowest, the 10th of the 10 attributes in one universe become the root and the starts of the next universe. And it is unable to close itself in the ladder except through contraction and obscuration. So too, from Yetzirah to Asiya, there too, the light of the world of Yetzirah had to be considerably limited to enable it to descend into the world of Asiya. I hope is clear because we spoke about it many times. As an elaborate explanation of these three contractions is given elsewhere in order to make them more accessible to our poor intellect. The purpose
It speaks to us.
But today with visualization, you can do it, you can visualize it very well. I should say that with DNA, it is so much easier with today's advance in science. It is so easier. When I was young and I studied it, you had to literally memorize the ideas without full grasp. Today, I should say, I understand that it's impossible, but I grasp it much. In other words, it makes sense to me, as opposed to before you had all the advancements in science that actually aids us in discovering God and the universe. The purpose of all the contractions is the creation of the material human body and the subjugation by men of the Sitra Achra to bring about the preeminence of light, supplanting darkness, by having light replace darkness, and even more so when the darkness itself is transformed into light, at which time the preeminence of light is felt to an even greater degree. This is accomplished when a person elevates his divine soul and his vivifying soul, a soul which receives a nourishment from Klippa, but through men's service in Torah and mitzvot is elevated and incorporated into holiness, thereby elevating the souls together with their garments of thought, speech, and action, and all the powers of the body to God alone, as has been discussed earlier in length. For this is the purpose of the progression descent of the worlds. Says the Rebbe, why am I born in darkness, total darkness? Because I have the power to ignite light. And that light has no value if I did it in the middle of the day where there is brightness. But in total darkness, a little spark makes a big difference. You can take a look and see everything around you. That's the purpose of the creation of universe. All the progressions and contractions that God went through, myriads upon myriads, losing the root, creating ex nihilo one universe, another, and a third, and a fourth, and then placing them, a physical human being, with a desire, with a soul that pulls the person only for evil, is so that he calls back and comes to God. So there are many examples to drive it home, and just one more. When a child matures and reaches a point where they're independent living, when they call home, when they come to visit, it brings great pleasure. Parents will go out of their way. You do not do it when the children are young and they come home from school, or when they live nearby. Only when they are very far. The little bit that they do brings a lot of attention, great attention. And the reason is that's the pleasure when a person on their own volition, with their own choice, make a connection, even though they have many reasons not to, other distractions, far away, forgetfulness, whatever, that brings great pleasure. So when I go to visit my mother these days, And I try very hard because for 2 weeks, my mother will not stop talking about me visiting. And my siblings somehow are not necessarily so excited because I have a sister who comes every week. I have another sister who comes to visit every day. I have another sister who comes at least every 3 days. My mother doesn't talk about it. My mother is a very lively, active person, so she has always people visiting, the neighbors, people coming by. There are lots, a very active life. Lots of people come. I couldn't believe it. For years I know it, but now I keep hearing that for 2 weeks my mother comes alive and talks about her son who is coming to visit. And my sisters say, what you do, they tell me, is a fraction of what we do. And it's true. Yet they don't get the attention.
You don't get the credit.
No credit, no attention. In addition, my mother will get agitated over small things with my sisters and my brother, but with me, so whenever there is a tough situation that we need to make sure my mother gets it, they wouldn't do it because she would yell, she would be very unhappy. When I say it, she respects that, because when you are very far, every little thing is credited, is felt, it has a lot of weight to it. And therefore, God wanted us to connect to God, so that every little thing that we do has great value. Here is the little story for somebody. I just wanted, because I'll forget that. So the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, I think, said that now, when the communists took power and it became forbidden to serve God, he says there will be days, there will be a time when you will crave and cry and wish to go back to those days. Because when Mashiach will arrive, things would be so easy and so simple, and you will not get the pleasure of the challenge. I'm sure you can relate to it, that when you're being challenged for something, together with the challenge, we feel good about ourselves. I did it. But if it's easy, it doesn't take much energy, then you don't value it so much. And the Rebbe would say to Chassidim, take note that in years to come, it will be so easy to serve God that you will crave the days where just finding a kosher meal or when finding a place to pray was so challenging, you'll say, I never enjoyed serving God in the same way. Yes, Harry.
Once when I visit my parents for a while, the mother says, Harry, send me a photograph. I want to remember what you look like.
I'm sure she loves you. Let's continue a little more reading. She made her point, that's for sure. So, what did you do?
Photographs.
What? I don't hear you.
Photographs.
The ultimate, I'm on the bottom of page 748. The ultimate purpose of all the descents from level to level and world to world is this physical world. It is here that a Jew is able, through his divine service, to affect the subjugation of evil and the preeminence of light, supplanting darkness. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to say that just as God's love for the Jews overcame all obstacles that, as it were, stood in the way of creating this physical world, contracting his infinite light so that finite beings could be created, so too should every Jew respond in kind by overcoming all obstacles that hinder him or her from serving God. Furthermore, his level of service too should not be finite but infinite. Says the Rebbe, after discovering what God went through, it's time for us to reciprocate and do the same. Serve God not in a finite matter but infinite. And as water mirrors the reflection of a face, we studied about that before, a mirror, just as water reflects an exact replica of one's face, so too with regards to the heart of man, to his fellow man, the love of one's person to another results in the other person's love in him as well. As God has, it were, laid down and set aside, figuratively speaking, his great infinite light, and has stored it away and concealed it by means of the three different kinds of contractions. We spoke about Beria, Yetzira, and Asiya, and all these because of his love for lowly men in order to raise them up to God. This means to say that God created a world in which man may serve him, and by doing so, man is uplifted to God. But how is it possible for love to bring about contraction, when love signifies kindness and expansiveness, while contraction and concealment characterize severity? The Alter Rebbe answers this implied question by pointing out that we find that love too can bring about contraction, as in the Gemara, as in the Gemara now quoted. In other words, you're telling me that God loves us so much that he contracted himself so their finite universe can be created. But if someone loves somebody, what do? They embrace them, they connect to them, they visit them, they see them, meaning they expand and they are connecting. Here you're telling me out of great love, God removed himself, stood behind, hide himself. You cannot find God. How is it possible? Says the Rebbe, for love impels the flesh. So that, I'll explain what the Talmud is talking about. So that the flesh will not impede it. Thus, because of God's love for his people, he, figuratively speaking, set aside his great light and concealed it through many contractions and so on, this being so. I'll tell you the story of the Talmud. Anybody heard about the flesh? What does the word? Impels. The flesh impels. Love impels the flesh. Anybody heard that before? Here is the story. It's a Talmudic story, so I have to share it. Let's see if Ali can remain serious without laughing. There is a rabbi, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's a part of the Talmud that I learned by heart, so I know the story very well. The Gemara describe how fat, how big they were, that when this rabbi would stand and another rabbi would stand, a pair of sheep can walk under. That's how big they were. So you can imagine a 440-pound, big. The Gemara. So a non-Jew, a Roman minister, came to the rabbi and said to him, to those two rabbis, I forgot the name of the other rabbi, you children are not yours, because it's impossible for you to cohabitate if your stomach is so big. So they answered, no worries. Their statement was 4 words. Love impels the flesh. He says, we love our spouses so much that it impels the flesh and we're able to connect. That's a Talmudic story. So, I'm sorry, that's, I studied it as a child, as a youngster.
No comment.
Now, yes, comment. The idea is that that's the way I see it. In other words, I should say that when you study Talmud, it's not just the text, it's between the line. The minister, those minister did not question anymore the legitimacy of the children of that man. And to me, what the lesson is, that if you love somebody, no boundaries, there are no limitations. You can't say, I can't. You can't say it's too hard. You can't say it's impossible. Truly loving somebody, you can do anything you want. And I can testify to it in many, many ways, and I'm sure everybody can say it. If you're truly in love with somebody, huh?
There's a statement, love conquers all.
Love conquers all, but here it's more than conquers. It's doing the impossibility. It's impossible. So here is a story. It just reminds me. I am not sure if it's true. I hope it's not true. A young couple came for divorce to a rabbi, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu. He's the chief rabbi. I don't think he's the chief rabbi. He's the son of the chief rabbi. He's the rabbi of Tzefat. Very well-respected rabbi. And the rabbi asked them, why do you want to get divorced? And they start blaming each other. But the rabbi says that's not good enough as a cause for divorce. He turned to the husband and he says to him, tell me the real reason. What's behind everything? The rabbi was able to peel through the many layers, and he realized it's not the real reason. As I say always, that divorce will begin with a small thing and then it develops. So the man says, I'll tell you the truth. And he never shared that with his wife. After the chuppah, when we got married, after the chuppah, what do? You go to a yichud room. You go to a room to be secluded. What's the purpose of that? To be alone, to consummate the marriage. The marriage is consummated. You're alone without anybody there. Until you marry, you're not allowed to be. I'm not allowed to be alone with another woman. Jewish, non-Jewish, doesn't matter. I'm not, except mother, daughter, etc. So we consummate the marriage by being alone in that room for 7-8 minutes. He said that when we went to the yichud room, everybody left the room, the door was closed, and suddenly the bride's phone rang. And she answered the phone. And it happened to be our best friend, of course. And the man says, at that moment, I said, if my wife don't see the sanctity of this moment to be with me, I don't want to live with that wife. And he says, the rest was just excuses. I started finding excuses. I hope it's not true, because you've got to be really stupid to answer the phone. I'm a real stupid. Imagine someone their whole life are dreaming about this moment, and this is a very secluded few moments, and you violate, it's a real violation of the relationship. God wanted to be with us alone. Therefore, he removed everything that's possible. That's what we call love, as you say, conquers all, or loves. What does it do? Impels the flesh. In other words, in order for God's love to be expressed, he had to remove himself, to go against his nature. The nature of love is to draw connection, to come closer. God, in order for him to love, as I told you, children, as they mature, the greater the love, the more space we give them. If we are not able to move backwards, we're not loving them. The opposite of what love is about. But that's the only way for a relationship that's a healthy relationship. If we allow for something to interfere, a phone call in the middle of the yichud room in that moment, it's a violation. There is no love. We have an opportunity when we pray to God, when we do a mitzvah, when we study Torah like now, we are connecting with God on a very high level. I want to finish reading this because next week we're going to talk about the Shema. How much more so, and an infinite number of times more, is it fitting that a man also should relinquish and set aside all he possesses, both spiritually and physically, and renounce everything in order to cleave to him with attachment, desire, and longing, without any hindrance, without within or without, neither of body nor soul. Hindrances from within, no money, no wife, and children. Hindrances from without. None of these things should hinder him from cleaving to God, By renouncing them all, he sets aside even his most important needs for the sake of his love of God, just like we sanctify the time we spend with a spouse. There are times where there should be no disturbances. We need to set aside for sanctity for God where are no disturbances, either when we study, when we pray, a time and day where we connect to God, just to show back, to give back a reflection, as we spoke about, reflecting what God does for us. And that's how we connect to God. Next week, we will this will help us to understand aspects of the prayer that we recite every morning. We'll stop right here. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.